Hello again! In case you haven't already noticed, today's color palette is going to be very, very orange. I've been really into Fruitier Metro these days, and I've been for a little while, but it's very fun. So why orange? To be honest, I just needed to justify buying this. Even though I might look like a traffic cone, this is actually vintage 90s hysteric glamour, so I'm wearing nylon in a DDR character way and not in a construction worker way. The graphic design for clothes tags back then actually had effort. I wish they'd bring that energy back. Because it's from the 90s, I was too scared to wash it before filming in case it just dissolves, since the washing instructions were so intimidating. I can't decide whether I should keep my bangs down or not, because when I had my bangs down in the last video, it kind of made me look like I was about to tell you it's time to go to bed. So these days, older brother core has been really trending on TikTok, so I originally was going to do one of those older brother core concepts, and I even got some random junk that I feel like an older brother would have, like Doritos, but you know, because I'm no one's older brother and I don't really have one myself, I don't really know how that works. A lot of the times though, I see in the comments that you guys tell me that I'm like an older brother to you, even though that might seem sweet, and it is. It kind of stings because it makes me feel really old. But I feel like I want to reconnect with the roots of my channel, so today I'm going back to another ugly mall that I know, and I'm going to be doing a 2005 mall vlog. I never liked taking buses, but I coped with it by framing it as fluorescent 90s urban grunge as I stared into space. The thing about growing up in the 2000s is that what I once considered low budget, tacky, and dated is now camp, nostalgic, and endearing. There's a certain aesthetic that I can't quite articulate that's unique to malls built in the mid-2000s that sort of makes me feel like I'm inside of a Lego set, sort of like a plastic retro futurism. I like it though, of course. It's sort of like being in a liminal space, but in real life. I never appreciated the architecture of a lot of malls back then when they were new, but the fluorescent orange really grew on me with age. I don't really do any research before filming, to be honest, so I went to the directory machine since it seemed on theme, but my room temperature IQ meant that it was painful to use. Not that it mattered, since I was trying to find an ugly restaurant and the listings were only logos. Still, it helped with my immersion with pretending I'm inside of a 2000s internet flash game. When I first got to the mall, my friend was insistent that the mall was red and not orange, but I got proven right because half of the stores in the decor were all orange. I wanted to point that out triumphantly, but there was a group of teenagers in school uniforms, so I got kind of self-conscious because I was dressed like a Pokemon trainer. It's an old mall in the middle of nowhere, so there were liminal space looking areas everywhere. I wanted to explore through that door, and I thought that my cameraman would follow, so I held the door open for too long. I was very mortified. Anyways, I always thought that the upside of architecture like this was that instead of being timeless, it will always be evocative of a certain time period, which is so much better, right? I ended up finding this quiet little gachapon area that matched my outfit exactly and was even fairly reasonably priced for what it was, but I didn't have any coins, so I just enjoyed the colors and left. I feel like an essential staple of every 2000s mall is an off-brand indoor amusement park. Of course, while the amount of colors here are an insult on the eyes, and I definitely would not have wanted to come here as a kid, I'm a sucker for novelty nowadays. There's even reflective surfaces for me to be indecisive about whether or not I should have bangs or not in. I didn't really want to spend any money on arcade games today, but I did find an abandoned gachapon prize on top of a generic brand claw machine. Then I remembered a snot-nosed kid probably touched it and I felt unclean. There was even a bumper car track, but I was too ashamed to bother the staff to write it as I am a grown adult. So I settled for playing the racing game outside. I felt kind of silly, but that's kind of the whole premise of my channel at this point, and I've grown numb to this sort of thing. The controls were really finicky, and the game ran at approximately 15 frames per second, but I'm a sucker for whimsical, nostalgic arcade games, so I didn't mind. But the combination of the frame rate and the fact that the car would gyrate constantly gave me a very mild motion sickness. I don't have a driver's license, and I don't think I ever will, since it's too much responsibility, but my performance in this game really cemented the idea that I shouldn't be on the road for the safety of the public. Once again though, whenever I touch these little arcade games that actual kids probably
touched, I immediately want to sanitize my hands from the grime. I think this place is probably a recent addition to the mall, but it's very 2010 pseudo-futuristic, which is also a vibe. It ended up being an entire floor of anime merch stores, which is kind of a hilarious contrast to the decor when the stock includes one-piece laminated snowboards. I was never into Digimon, but I feel like the image of Agumon is really nostalgic to me for some reason. I always thought that he was too realistically proportioned in the head to be cute, but it's kind of endearing to me now. I still kind of hate Astro Boy though. I headed to the food court hoping to find something atmospherically very early 2000s, but I wasn't really feeling it, so I just went to have some omu rice. It was phone ordering again, but at some point when there's only like 3 people in a restaurant, that's probably even more embarrassing than just talking to the waiter. What I like about physical menus at chain restaurants though, is that they always seem to have 2010s charm in their graphic design, especially with the kids menu here. Like, you can tell that a millennial in corporate was really proud of it, as they should be. I'm kind of tired of the whole vlogging pretty desserts thing since I do it quite often, so we ended up just getting food that was various shades of brown and beige. I did end up getting dessert again while I was out, as is tradition, but even then it's still kind of sad and beige, but I digress. I heard that there was a rough looking old orange mall that was about to close down in the near future, and I rushed over there while I was in the area, only to be disappointed that it was surprisingly modern. I mean, yes, it had that liminal space vibe, and yes, the supermarket shelves were empty, but it just wasn't giving off the aura that it gave on the outside. In fact, it felt kinda corporate. There was this cool little Vivian Westwood outlet there with pretty 2000s styled mannequins and colorful bags, as well as an unstaffed fleet of creepy Tesla cars indoors, but it just didn't feel nostalgic enough to me. So I went to Toys R Us to breathe in the hyper-saturated colors for a few minutes and checked out the Nerf toy since it seemed like something that's vaguely older brother core. Anyways, after I picked up the candy I knocked over, I went over to the Namco arcade since it was also blisteringly neon orange, and as big of a fan as I am of shiny objects, stuffed animals, and the smell of bleach, I have had a bad history of Namco, so I was only here for the vibes. You see, last summer, when I originally wanted to start vlogging, Frutiger Era was supposed to be the concept for my first vlog, but I postponed it for quality, so this is like year-old footage. Anyways, I went to another Namco, and I thought that you could purchase arcade tokens through the automated machine instead of talking to a part-timer, but as luck would have it, it was only valid for the coin throwing minigame, if you can even call it that, where you're supposed to self-report your wins by yelling, and the little girl next to me would always steal my wins, and what was I supposed to do about that? What kind of monster would yell over a little girl just for a lollipop? Anyways, today has been pretty fun, even if it wasn't as older brother core as I hoped. I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me again today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.